Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and I'm taking care of business. Joining me today is Dustin Fuhs, who is the co-editor-in-chief of Retail Insider, national publication, Retail Insider. And like our previous gigs together, I'm going to turn the tables and let Dustin take over and ask questions. Our topic today is on the rise of independent journalism in Canada. Take it away, Dustin.
Awesome. So this is a fun conversation for us because we kind of live in a world right now where the typical newsroom doesn't exist anymore. You're not going into the office at 6 o'clock in the morning and going through what was going to be on your docket and figuring out where you were going to go, which meetings were going to be held where. We're actually going into a different world where we have a 24-hour news cycle. We have journalists all across the country that can cover different segments. And it's a very interesting time, especially in the independent world of journalism, where you don't need to have the press credentials of a Globe and Mail or the Herald or wherever. You're almost creating these smaller organizations that almost have more pull than some of these larger organizations that were all spread across based on their subscribers and their distribution channels. Things have changed, right?
Well, yeah, and you know what? Let's if we backtrack a second, I think what it's important to note is the gutting of newsrooms in the mainstream media over the last 10 years. Like it doesn't matter if it's print or radio or TV, all newsrooms have been decimated in recent years because of financial constraints and cutting costs, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, when you have less people, you got less stories and to write or to share on radio and TV. So over the years, more and more of these mainstream media entities have kind of moved away from doing a lot of the local media or storytelling that they might have done 20 years ago, 10 years ago even. What that has done is it's created a void. And, people are still craving that stuff. People love, local journalism. They also love stories that tell them about a wide range of topics, but they're not getting that anymore from the mainstream media. So boom, in comes all these new kind of niche publications, I'm looking at Calgary. There's one on on business. There's one on the arts and entertainment sector. There's one on kind of community news and politics. There's another one on just general news. So more and more we're seeing this happen, and that's that's on top of all the other publications that are growing because they have a niche area to cover, like Retail Insider, right?
Yeah, and the other one that's out there that's very prominent and probably one of the ones that I subscribe to outside of obviously Retail Insider is The Athletic. And you have a very unique niche of independent journalists who actually were pulled from other newsrooms where they were probably at the CBC or at NBC or ABC, and they've all kind of come together under this one umbrella. And obviously for those types of things, they put behind a paywall because a lot of these organizations, you have to be able to pay to have this kind of skill in your newsroom. But that's a very interesting look at things, because if you're going to a catch-all newsroom where they're trying to be the best of local sports and business and everything, how many, and I come from a smaller town in Kamloops, BC, with some of my favorite journalists and friends out there, and there are some days where news just doesn't happen. So how do you build a newspaper around that?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? Everybody's got different interests, and somebody who is interested in sports may not give a hoot about business. So that's where it's opening the door to a lot of these publications that focus on specific things. Retail Insider, obviously, about retail, and then there's there's a couple of other ones out there that that focus on just specific sectors and industries. Here's a number I'll throw out. Like, I left the Herald, Calgary Herald, 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago, laid off, part of the gutting of newsrooms. When I left, there was one business reporter left, one daily news business reporter left. They had a couple of columnists, obviously, that wrote things, but on a day-to-day basis, writing news stories, one left. Now, bear in mind, this is a city of 1.2, 1.3 million people. It's the oil patch capital of Canada. It's a business capital of Canada, along with Vancouver and Toronto. And you have a major daily newspaper with one person. It just unbelievable, right? And so as I said, so a lot of these people out there have opened the door with these niche publications. The other thing too to bear in mind is there's the whole idea of blogging and bloggers. Yeah. There's bloggers out there that are basically news people. I guess, in many ways, I guess I could consider myself one of them, because I do a lot of news and storytelling that I just do on my own. That's through all my social media channels. There's many of them like me, like out there. There's food people, right? That they write all about the food industry and all that.
I have that with my own. So I've been the editor-in-chief of stepstomagic.com for 6 years, and that's a Disney trip planning website focused around Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando. And I was getting better readership pre-pandemic than a lot of news publications out there. And it's just a different way of showcasing news.
Yeah.
And for me, my entire world was over on Pinterest.
Oh, yeah.
Which at that time it was I was getting 3.2 monthly or 3.2 million monthly views on Pinterest. And it was just because of the way that things were structured, and it was writing, and it was, doing things that were very unique. Yeah. But I was getting higher readership than a lot of newspapers and other journalists were getting, just because I was on a different platform.
Yeah. And, it's interesting when you look at the whole dynamic. Two things that I wanted to point out, and you talk about interest in the readership and the reach, right? Over the years, these mainstream outlets have really plummeted in terms of their reach. I know newspapers don't like to talk about circulation anymore because those numbers have plunged beyond belief. But they talk about readership, right? And when they talk about readership, that's an easily manipulated metric, right? Because if I have a daily newspaper and I'm putting, I don't know, 20 of these in every McDonald's, am I counting a circulation of 20, or am I counting circulation of 20 times perhaps how many people come into a McDonald's on a daily basis? And it's usually the second part of it, because they want to embellish those numbers and look good. But people on a personal level have just as high a reach as some of these mainstream media. I'm a little peon type individual. I do have a very substantial social media following, but not in the range of some of these other people out there that have got, gosh, hundreds of thousands, right? And so that's the other aspect of it. A lot of people are turning to these people, these quote unquote influencers, these bloggers, for their information. And again, it's a challenge, I think, that the mainstream media is having to deal with, and it'll be an increasingly more competitive challenge for them.
Yeah, and you're barking up the right tree on that, because we're seeing a lot of individuals who, and I look towards the sports industry as the biggest benefit. You have former NHL players who become analysts,
Yeah.
and then they become insiders, and then they're the ones that you follow based on what kind of news they can get. Now, they may not be the best writer, but if they tell me that this player is getting traded to this team, how much more of a news source do you need to be than just 50 characters on a tweet?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And you as a reader are getting the information you need. Who cares if it's from Billy Hot Shoes out of New York, who's tweeting something about a trade that's going to be happening with the Maple Leafs and the Calgary Flames. If it's right and it's a credible guy that's has a reputation of being credible, well, there's your news, right? And you don't have to wait for the Globe and Mail or Toronto Star or Toronto Sun to tell you that, because this guy's telling you this, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times our information comes incredibly quickly. As we set out from the very beginning, we're in a 24-hour news cycle, and things can change incredibly quickly. And you and I know this firsthand from just some of the stories that we've been able to break over on Retail Insider, and you've broken over your career. Sometimes it's the right place at the right time with the right camera, and you're able to just put it out there. So things have changed in that world. Yeah. And obviously niche and independent journalism is incredibly important, because you're also getting a different spin on the news. A lot of times PR folks want to control that story.
Well, let's look at this. So you're talking about a different spin on the news, and I'll give a plug in here, but simply because I'm talking about them. But look at Rebel News, right? For example, and what Ezra Levant has done there. My gosh, I don't know how many subscribers they have, but it's massive, right? And it's there because they're independent. They offered an alternative to the mass media. They're doing something different and presenting other sides of the story that mass media haven't presented. So there's their success. Now, when we're talking about this, obviously everybody wonders about credibility. Everybody wonders about fake news, especially it's a buzzword of these times, fake news. But
or BuzzFeed, where it's a clickbaity headline.
Yeah, but the thing is that over time, these individual bloggers, these independent journalism outlets, they gain a matter of trust and credibility by their reporting, right? And it's pretty darn fast that you're going to realize, well, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and it's all fake news, and you're not going to go there. But if you see a pattern of credibility and the builds and somebody reputation, then those people and those readers will go to those guys.
Yeah. I actually see it more of a passion thing as well. Independent journalists that are out there understand what they're talking about, because they're not just on the beat. They know the background. They understand where things are going. And that's why the independent and niche journalism is so important, because if you're able to talk passionately about whatever thing you're writing about, I trust you as a source versus somebody who has gone from the City Hall beat to the crime beat to the business beat because at that point you're basically just taking that role and that information and then disseminating it, putting it out there, and then you move on. But a lot of these folks, and I look at Apple, the tech side of the world as being very intricate, as well as the sports side. I love, hearing some of these fans who have season tickets and they become independent journalists.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? In this day and age, everybody can become an independent journalism in many ways, right? But you know what,
Yeah.
you know, we've talked about the fact that why the opportunities there, what, you know, what are the conditions that have created that opportunity to exist. But what's fueled that opportunity and accelerated it for people is this online world that we live in, right? It is so darn easy in the digital space now to, you know, to do all this, to, you know, whether it's through all these social media channels, everything from YouTube and, you know, LinkedIn and Facebook, Twitter, you know, you name it, you know, Instagram, to do that, but also, you know, the ability to put together a website that has news. The other thing, which is really intriguing, is the newsletter part of it, right? That too becomes, you know, a venue for independent journalists, and we have a lot of people that have created newsletters specific to their industries, whether it be retail, whether it be real estate, you name it, and they get a subscription base, and you can have exclusive content going to you because you've subscribed to this person's newsletter.
Yeah, it's all about influence. It's all about readership, and going to be a fun conversation in the next little bit of time, because I know as we get into election season in different areas, and as we start seeing different sports, you know, pop up, it's going to be a really fun one. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the next episode, which I'm sure we'll be able to come up with something fun in between now and the next time we chat.
All right, super. Thanks, Dustin, for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, super. That's Dustin Fuhs, who is the co-editor-in-chief of Retail Insider, a national publication in Canada. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.